Welcome to the vlog. I'm your host, Craig Winn. We're here in the library studio. I feel a bit like the driver with whiplash. We have gone through the 8 days of Hanukkah and that swamp of decadent and absurd religious notions into the pit of Christmas, all one day to the next. And quite frankly, I feel like having to participate in X and Facebook, where every other feed has been celebrating one of the two pagan, absurd religious holidays that a shower that I took this morning is simply not enough. Let it be known that when Jews decided they would have a 9-candle menorah and that they would celebrate Hanukkah as a national and religious holiday, they acted more egregiously than did the Jews of the Exodus when they crafted the golden calf. It remains worse than the meltdown of the waters of Meribah. And I say it's worse than the golden calf because the golden calf turned a symbol of the Egyptian religion, the Apis, the bull cult of the pharaohs, into a golden calf. And Yahweh's response, of course, was to eliminate the lives, to extinguish the lives of all of those who participated in that religious endeavor. While Hanukkah corrupts Yahweh's symbol. Far worse. That's like Judaism replacing the Torah with the Talmud. That's like rabbis replacing the Lohi. It's reprehensible because the menorah doesn't have 9 candles. It has 7. Because there are 7 Moedim: Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim, Shabuwah, Taruwah, Kapurim, and Sukkah. And for anyone to corrupt Yahweh's symbols, well, it's akin to trying to change Yahweh's name from Yahweh to Hashem. It's unforgivable. It's reprehensible. It's disgusting. And then we go from that to goddamn celebration of the Saturnalia, of the birth of pagan gods like Dionysus and Bacchus, Tammuz and Osiris. Yeah, they were all born on the winter solstice. That's when the longest night of the year and the days start to grow longer. And it's been always the time when the son of the sun was born. 9 months after, of course, the earth impregnates, or the sun impregnates Mother Earth during the Easter celebration. These are just purely pagan holidays, now designed to make the myth of Jesus more popular. Let me tell you something. You're a Christian, you're an idiot. God's not born. God is not born. God is not a baby. The Babylonians were not wise men. They were occultists, astrologers. There's no star of Bethlehem. The person who came from Bethlehem is Dode David. Dode is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. He is the Savior. He is the chosen one. He is the returning King. Not this mythical creature that Paul invented. There was no Jesus in the 1st century. It's all a lie. Counterfeit. And to celebrate Christmas is to say, I don't think I'm going to spit in God's face and see how he likes it. Ever read Yirmiyahu? Talks about the disgusting nature of hauling a tree into the living room and decorating it. You should. Or what God has to say about Asherah, the mother goddess, and the veneration of Easter. It is pathetic. It's not godly. It is religious, but religions are all grossly inappropriate and pagan, irresponsible. So, with that note, and this being the day that the Twistians are celebrating their birth of their baby god, I'd like to share some truth with you. Now, a couple of program notes. Earlier today, before this program, I made 2 posts. One is exceedingly sad. My friend for the longest time, coworker, long time ago, but just genuinely good guy that created the YAHOWAH website originally and now has recreated it and has also become our publisher. He shared a letter this morning with me that was written by his great-grandfather to his grandfather. It was written in 1940 in Germany. My good friend Joe is Jewish. And it acknowledges that they knew their fate would be to die in Poland in the concentration camps. And the letter was written to a son, that Joe's grandfather, that his great-grandfather wrote after he had sent him off to America, and it was called the 1,000 Children Exodus, when 1,000 German children were sent out of Germany just prior to, the worst of it. 1938, I believe, was when the 1,000 children exodus occurred. The 1,000 children were accepted when all adults that were Jews trying to leave Nazi Germany were not accepted. They were sent back to be exterminated by Americans. Anti-Semitism was rife in America, as it was rife throughout Europe. And this letter is from a father to his son that he had last seen 8 years prior when he was 13 years old, that he had sent out of the country to survive the anti-Semitism of Europe, and particularly of the Nazi Germans. And it's heartbreaking because, well, anti-Semitism is worse today than it was in 1930s and 1940s Europe. It's worse. And today it's fanned by the same cast of characters, Marxists and Muslims. And it soon will become even deadlier. I've long stated that while individual men and women can be good or bad, that is not the case for collective man. When men and women congregate religiously, politically, patriotically, militarily, conspiratorially, they're always bad, 100% of the time. And that truth has never been more alarming than it is today. So I wanted you to have the opportunity to see it. Don't read it if you're overly sensitive, but if you are not, I would encourage you to read it. The other news item is that I have wanted, and so has Joe, to create a proprietary font that is a more accurate and usable rendering of what we call now early Semitic. It's a downloadable font, and it's the one where the Hey is the man standing up, reaching up, where the Yod is the outstretched hand, where the Aleph we have depicted as a ram, even though the horns are inappropriate for a ram, and it's called an ox by everyone else. And so we've taken each letter. We've spent a lot of time looking at the oldest examples, which are not only in that lead tablet that I posted on the Facebook site, but also all examples of early Phoenician, because with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions, this 22 letters in ancient Phoenician mirror their counterparts in Hebrew. And also the Moabite stone, which is another example. But we've looked at everything that exists, prioritizing the lead tablet, and have come to, I think, a better understanding of the design of each of these letters. And we have worked to create a more immediately recognizable depiction of the concept they're conveying. For example, in all of the languages, the dalet is called a door, but it's drawn slightly differently from one to another. And the one that's currently that we're currently using is a little squatty thing. It's about this tall. And so, we've heightened the shape of that, recognizing that then in the related languages, they've gone more to the kind of door you would have at the opening of a tent, which is kind of, more of this, although tilted. And we've gone more to this, but not so squatty, to properly convey the message. And, you look at doorways that would have been available to be depicted by Moshe when he scribed the Torah. The arch was not available in Mitzrayim, where they would have spent time. It was not available to the Canaanites. And so it wasn't even available to the Babylonians, from whence they originally came. There were no arches. And in rock designs, there were very few pyramids either. They were mostly rectangular with bars across. In fact, the doorway is described with the upright beams and the lintel that goes across. So it is a rectangular shape. And so we've depicted it as a rectangular shape and not as the more D shape, although it's always backwards with a point like you're going into a tent. And we've looked at things like the wah, which is shown in the rendition we're using with a kind of a peg that goes down and this sort of thing. But that can't be accurate because a tent peg has a loop at the top. That's where you tie the lines to secure the tent. And we've seen that's either a diamond or a round circle at the top of them. So we've tried to incorporate that in. I think we've come up with a much more effective presentation of the hay. We've made the home of the Bayeth more like a drawing of a home. So we've gone through each of these letters and worked to refine them. We're very close to having finished with the drawing and redrawing and studying every ancient text we can find to get the letters as accurate as possible. Understanding too that the penmanship differed, and even the same person writing varied from, that there's 8 LFs on the lead tablet that dates to the 15th century BCE on Mount Ebal that has, the lines from the Torah about the curses if you don't adhere to the instructions of the covenant. If you break it, these are the curses, and it even has Yahweh's name. But you can see that the penmanship, now they're pressing into lead, so you're not going to get great penmanship. The shapes of the letters differ when there's a bunch of them. But what we did notice is that on the LF, for example, more times than not, in addition to the 2 horns, which are not ram's horns that would come down like this or come in like this, or like this, but they're horns that go up. They're more bullish horns than they are ram's horns. The shape of the head is 50% triangle, which would be a ram, and kind of squared off too, about 50% more squared off, which would be the bull. It's a blend between the both. But there's almost always, and in all of the related languages, a square beam that goes across at the across the image of this bull or ram or combination thereof. And it's not horns. It's a yoke. And you never yoked a ram, but you do yoke oxen. And so that we're not confused, an ox is not a species. An ox is a bull. The difference is that the ox is a castrated bull. That's the only difference between an ox and just any other bull. In other words, all oxen are bulls. Not all bulls are oxen, because technically, to be an ox, they've castrated the bull. So it is both, I think. Most present it as the ox or the bull, but you see, you can't have the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet be the bull. You can't have the first letter in Yahweh's name be exclusively a bull. You can't have the first letter in, well, not Yahweh's name, in God being a bull, or the first letter in Father being a bull exclusively. You can have the bull and the ram together, because the bull is nothing without the ram, and the ram is unknown without the bull. So you can have them blended together, which is what the letter seems to do, and that's how we're going to depict it, as it is drawn most commonly in the earliest depictions of the letter, and describe it more accurately. It is a morph of a ram and a bull. It's the greater and lesser luminaries working together. It's the tree of lives supporting the tree of knowledge supporting the tree of lives. It is Eldod and Midod. It is King and Herald. So it is Obed-Edom as the bull taking the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem and onto the Temple Mount, so that Dod can celebrate and enjoy the moment. So it depends to be a blend of those two letters. And it's been fun kind of working through it, to be as honest as we can with our research and then the depiction of these letters. But we'll soon have a font for you to be able to download, and then we'll replace it when we present it in our books. We have some charts. We have many places where we use what's called early Semitic, and now it's going to be Yada Torah is what Joe has decided to call it. So we'll have that ready for you. And one last program note is that I've shared in a previous episode that I have gone beyond what we're reading here, and I'm going to be incorporating that into a future program here, where we're talking about these two harvests, the Shabuwah harvest of standing grain of Qamah, and then of the Taruwah serving as the Laqat to facilitate the gleaning of the olives during Taruwah. And eventually we're going to show you where we turn in Yashaya 56 and 57 to demonstrate conclusively that God's not talking about harvesting wheat or harvesting olives, but of harvesting people, bringing them to Shamayim, taking them out of this world for a purpose. And it becomes obvious in Yashaya 57, which we will cover. What I did not know, because I was perhaps not as diligent in translating, or just didn't know really what to look for, in the follow-on statements after Isaiah 57, 1 through 3. It goes on from there, and it speaks of those who are left behind. Not those left behind now in after Taruwah, because this is speaking of the Shabuwah harvest, but those who are left behind and who are clamoring to be part of the harvest and now are all upset that they were left, that they expected that Shabuwah harvest to include them, and it doesn't. And God describes them. And I will tell you that if you are associated with that cult that we have called the Mother Goddess cult because of their promotion of a mother god, you're in serious trouble. It is as explicit as it is possible to be in words. That those who came out to besmirch Yahweh, to change Yahweh's name, to denigrate what Dodid achieved, to slander me, and to mock Yada Yahweh, that was a really bad choice with horrible consequences. And I will be sharing that statement with you as we move through this text. Now, with Wookie's permission here, as he is really zonked out for this portion of the program, but we're going to continue. This is the last passage I read at the end of our last program. Then he will actually be, and it will come to exist, that someone who can be compared to the Katsir, the harvester. The Katsir, another title, the harvester, will be collecting and assembling the ingathering and withdrawing them while escorting, this is Asaph, the Qamah, the standing grain, that which is established and ready to rise, still in the field. And this Zeroah, the one who is cultivating the seeds that have been sown for this harvest to be fruitful and productive, he will reap the ingathering from the field with unfolding implications, even as time runs short during an anguishing period for the first fruits. Flowing is a stream of grain. Means that this is occurring at the beginning of the time of Jacob's troubles. It also means that the Zeroah and the Katsir, the reaper of the harvest and the one cultivating the harvest, are one and the same. And that he will not only be responsible for collecting this harvest, but he will be accompanying those who are en route to Shamaim, to the seventh dimension at this moment. In addition, then, and one last thought, of course, is that because it's of the specific reference to Qamah, standing grain, based on the Torah's depiction, this is the Shabuwah harvest, which is specifically called a Katsir. In addition, then, he will actually be someone consistent with a Laqat. After serving as the Katsir of Shabuwah on behalf of the standing grain of this Qamah, the ones who are Qub, established and engaged and performing upright, that then later he's going to be a Laqat. He's going to be the one who gleans the smaller, final, and more challenging ingathering, rapidly removing what remains of the fruit still on the stems, off the main branch, appearing out of a torrent of floodwaters, moving as a stream from one place to another. in the profound depths of Raphaim, where the sick will be healed, the defective will be restored, and yet the feeble will continue to falter, while the souls of the dead will remain. It is a time when on that fulcrum you can go down, but as you know, on that fulcrum, that which one side goes down, one side goes up, that's what Raphaim describes. Those who have been sick will be healed. The defective will be restored. They're going up. The feeble, however, they're going to falter. The souls of the dead will remain. That is the instruction regarding Taruwah. And it says, on Taruwah, he will remain. He's going to endure being left behind with the remainder as flesh and blood, for having caused people with physical bodies to be spared as a remnant. Char. During this time. Oela, immature fruit, thrust aside and left on the stems and branches, as would be the case with an olive tree when it is beaten from all around to shake some of the fruit 2 or 3 or a second and third time. Removed, these olive berries held back or grasped by the neck and taken away. And the top, most crucial and foremost vocal branch, the one who speaks, promises, and relates. 4 or 5 or the 4th and 5th in the clefts of his crag, and the branches which have been broken off of the parah, of the fruitful and productive bull, of the one cultivating a flourishing and abundant harvest on behalf of future generations. This has been the prophetic word declared by Yahweh, who is the God of Yisrael, of those individuals who engage and endure with the Almighty. I've shared all the implications of this with you, probably 8 times already. And it is as profoundly important as any prophetic statement that we could possibly read, particularly when you put it in context with everything else Yeshaya revealed about the Zeroah, about the Parah, about the Katzir, about the Choder serving in this role, about the man from Edom who saves many at this time. And understand, this is Yahweh speaking through Yeshaya. This tells us what's going to happen and who's going to benefit, why, on Shabuwah, as well as how that same individual is going to be put to work and is going to succeed during Taruwah, and then what even happens following the Taruwah Laqat, with the sacrifice of the man from Edom, this Adamah Parah. It's all been there, 2,700 years. The first to see it, but that is common for us, is it not? One would expect it from the tree of knowledge. One would expect it from one who has the 7 spirits of Yahweh, including the very Ruach of Yahweh and the spirit of Qamah and of Bien, intelligence and understanding, who is the Etzah, Dayath, the tree of knowledge, who is sufficiently Gabora to be bold enough, confident enough to share a message with you that the entire world will be opposed to, but happens to be consistent with the word of God. So according to Yahweh, a man will arrive who is comparable to a katzir, a harvester. collecting, withdrawing, and escorting the Qamah, the standing grain, which has been established and has continued to mature. This Zaroah, one cultivating the productive harvest, will gather the Qamah from the field as time runs short during a vexing period as a flowing stream of grain. Then, in addition, he will serve as a Laqat, as one who gleans a final, more challenging ingathering, rapidly removing the fruit as a torrent of floodwaters appears, thereby curing and restoring the infirmed, those who have been sickened by religion and politics. He will remain behind as flesh and blood, while enabling the mortal remnant, now considered immature fruit, which has been set aside as they were whacked off the olive tree in a second and third attempt. And they are from the most crucial stem and vocal branch, makes them Yehud. A fourth and fifth attempt will leave them in the crags and branches of the Parah, this productive bull. And then we learn that the Katsir, the Laqat, the Zaroah, and the Parah, all one and the same, is a particularly observant man who is focused on, well, as the Choder, the final of the 7 Ruach, is to Ra'ah, Yahweh, to respect and revere Yahweh. He is, after all, the one who is enabling, promoting, and producing this result. The bull is an implement, someone Yahweh is working through to achieve what he intends. The prophecy, with again Yahweh speaking to us through Yashayah, reads, in that specific day, during this time, this man, this singular male, the masculine singular of Adamah, the bloody red man of the earth, he will be particularly observant, actually and consistently paying attention to, highly regard and accept Sha'ah. He will look favorably toward and respond appropriately to the Almighty. Ashahu, his maker, the one who will engage and act with him to get this done. And his eyes, his perspective, his focus, well, these eyes will choose to continuously look to the Kodesh, set apart one. The Kodesh, the set apart one of Yisrael. Yashayah, salvation is from Yahweh, Isaiah 17:7. I dare say that Yashayah 5, 6, and 7 are the very foundation upon which we build our understanding of what is going to transpire these next 7.5 years. To understand all that God had to share about the means that he would deploy to bring his family back into a relationship with him is the essence of life. Again, it is the fulcrum upon which your soul moves one way or the other. Through his prophet, Yashayah, Yahweh foretold that he will work with a man, which is common for him, It's a standard operating procedure. He did it with Noah. He did it with Moshe. He did it with Shamuel. Oh, boy, did he ever do it with Dode. He did it through this prophet, Yeshua, a man I dearly love. He's doing it again with the object of Yeshua's prophetic witness. In fact, that's who he's talking about. So Yahweh foretold that he will work with a man, once again, who he has referred to here as not here, but his initial reference to this man is as the Katan Mayor. He's the lesser luminary, because the lesser luminary reflects the greater luminary's light, and the greater luminary is the set apart one of Yisrael. He is the Nakri, the observant foreigner. He is the Choder, the stem. He is the Etz Dayath, the tree of knowledge. He is the Katsir, the harvester, the Laqat, reaper, the Zeroah, productive cultivator, and the Parah, the fruitful bowl. I have struggled with this because, quite frankly, my preference would be to tell God's story through the people that he worked with in the past, and to explain how Moshe spoke of the means that Dode would use to enable our reconciliation, and how Yahweh and Dode worked to flesh out the words of the Torah. And personally, I would have preferred that God leave it at that, and that I could have written all of these books from beginning to end under that name rather than this name. I can assure you that in the here and now, had that been the case, my life would be considerably more relaxed. This morning when it was really pretty and the course was all green, my wife says, "Why don't you go out and play golf with your friend? You know, Joe's here. He likes to play golf." I said, I bought a new set of clubs 6 years ago. I've never once used them. They sit in a garbage bag at the top of a storage closet. I think you know that I'm a pilot, used to own marvelous airplanes. I've sold my last airplane. I love the sea. I'm a captain. I came to this island on a beautiful boat named Kara. We sold it too. Leah and I, and now Rich here, and Joe's now here, and we're having others soon join us. This is what we do. Every day, 7 days a week. And, well, I love the opportunity. My preference was for anonymity. Wasn't God's. And my conclusion that I drew now 24 years ago is that my responsibility would be to go where the words lead. And where the words lead is away from anonymity. God has as many descriptive titles pursuant to the role that I've been asked to play regarding the restoration of his name, Yahweh, and the restoration of his son's accomplishments, Dod. And the only person who has more descriptive titles in this regard would be the greater luminary, the Tree of Lives, the Messiah and King, Dod. But when God told us through Moshe that, and repeats it in Devarim, Deuteronomy, he told us this in Numbers 11 and then repeats it in Deuteronomy, Devarim 18, that when God chooses to speak through a man, he makes it very clear that he has chosen him. And he has many descriptive titles regarding that role and many references to them. And in this case, there are so many hundreds of them that it must reach up into the thousands. And here, that are pertinent to what we're talking about, there's a half a dozen. Now, there's not 1,000 titles, but there's 1,000 references to these various titles and to this role. I have come to appreciate why God did this, why Yashayah is so focused on it. Man from Edom, Choder, Nakri, Nakar, the Etz Dayath, the Etza Dayath, the Laqat, the Zeroah, the Para. The reason is that Israel has been estranged from God, and God has been divorced from his people. 2,700 years. And in all that time, Israel has never been circumspect. Nary a Jew has said, boy, we have really blown it. It's obvious that we no longer have a relationship with God. We need to figure out what's wrong with us and resolve this so that we can be included again in the covenant, so that God resumes his relationship with us. What have we done wrong beside, well, been belligerent, been religious, been political, denied him, raised his name, and besmirched everything his son has accomplished? Well, yeah, all of those things. But there were none. And in Yashayah, we're told emphatically that, quite frankly, there are none. And so if you're going to get his people's attention after 3,700 years of them not only ignoring Yahweh, but screaming over him with rabbis and the Talmud, that you must make it emphatically clear in essentially every book that is inspired, and I'm quite confident it's in every inspired book, that you've chosen someone to reclaim the Son of God's dignity, his accolades, his accomplishments. And that's why all of the description is here. But it's more than that. It gets right back to that discussion. What is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet? Everybody heretofore said it's a bull. I've said it's a ram. I don't want it to be a bull. I want it to be the ram. But it's not drawn to depict just a ram, but also the bull. Now, mind you, I love the idea that God would trust me enough to be the bull that's pulling the Ark of the Covenant towards the Temple Mount. I love being, God trusted me enough to say, I want you to be the bull who lays down his bashar to purge my people on Taruwah. I appreciate that. So the sacrifice has never been a concern to me. And I have since learned that what God is trying to achieve, and he has a few successes along the way, is that he's trying to prove that we as humans can resolve the failings of Adam, that we can engage, that we can be diligent, that we can be steadfast and work it through. Learn on the job, grow, recover from our stumbles and mistakes, and be stronger for them. Be good listeners. Be especially observant and thoughtful. Be reliable. And God's trying to prove that that's possible. And there can't be any shortcuts in that. And if God's going to do it, he wants you to know through whom he is accomplishing these things. He wants you to know the proof statement. And that's why there's so many mentions. That's why the Nakri is an observant foreigner and called out for. That's why the prophecy in Devarim 29, the one that is so emphatic on introducing Ha-Nakri as the observant foreigner that resolves this waywardness of Israel in the end, and why it is then refined and repeated in the Sermon on the Mount when Solomon dedicates the opening of the first temple on Mount Moriah, and why it is all the way through the Torah and now throughout Yeshaya, is that God says, I can prove to you it can be done. And at the same time, I can teach you what you need to know so that you too can engage in a meaningful way. Be part of my family. Benefit from all I have to offer. That's why it's done this way. And so, would it be more comfortable to have somebody else have come upon all of this knowledge and to be speaking of it? I'm not sure. Because part of me would say, all right, so what are you going to do? It's the same thing I tried to do all the time when somebody would write me a letter thanking me for writing all these books and helping them come to know Yahweh. So, thank Yahweh, not me. I'm just an implement that he's using. Are you going to spend your whole life trying to say, I don't want credit? They don't, but that doesn't sound very productive, does it? So God has brought this to our attention in so many ways and so many times that he's saying, hey, dummy, own it. Celebrate it. Be confident in it. I trust you to do this. You can, you will. It's important. And so, this is the life of the final Zeroah, the one cultivating the harvest, the parah, this fruitful bull, which is why he shares the image of the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet with his beloved brother and king, Dod. God even revealed when, where, and why all of this would transpire so we would understand it. And Yahweh wants us to know that this will occur on his schedule, when he has pronounced, and that the man of his choosing was chosen because he was not only particularly observant, but he is productive. He's a Zeroah. He is productive. He's a parah. He is a bull. Ever meet a timid bull? And this man's attention is on the man, the set-apart one of Yisrael, Dod. And through him to the other set-apart one of Yisrael, Dod's father, our God, Yahweh, because Yahweh is enabling the result. And this quite clearly says that Yahweh is the one who is engaging and acting to make this occur through his Katsir, through his Laqat, through his Taruwah, through his Parah, on the benefit of his covenant family. So beyond even all of this, we find the Taruwahs reunited. The sacrificial victim of the fall Moedim is shown focusing upon honoring the set-apart one of Yisrael, the man who fulfilled the spring Mikra. So if you want to know why God would make the ram and the bull such a significant part of his nomenclature and have so many prophecies regarding them, opening with the first chapter of the first book of the Torah and the greater and lesser luminaries, and then the tree of knowledge and lives in the second chapter, and working all the way through the prophets, it's because there are two men who fulfilled the 7 Moed Mikra. They don't do any of this alone. They do it with the full engagement and action of Yahweh. But Yahweh doesn't act alone. And he wants you to recognize that there were people, part of his creation, that were willing to give it all for you, willing to devote their lives to learning, willing to be observant, willing to listen, willing to share, willing to engage, willing to endure whatever it takes. And men who, when they stumble, get right back up stronger for it. Speaking of the ram and the bull, Dode and Yada. Ha-Adam, in this statement, is a singular male, as is the depiction of the Katsir, of the Laqat, of the Parah, of the Taruwah. Even when the titles have the ah ending, it doesn't make them girly, because the verbs that follow are written in third person masculine singular, just as is Ha-Adam. And the Adamah doesn't become a girly man when it has the ah ending. There is something about Hebrew and the ah ending that is not just far more relevant and instructive than taking a masculine noun and making it feminine, because it's additive. The etz tree doesn't become a girl tree by becoming etzah. The etz becomes, as etzah, a source of information, of counsel and advice on the complete story, from one branch to the other, from the first to the last, of the whole tree of knowledge, when it becomes etzah. The Parar bull doesn't become a girly cow by Parah, becomes fruitful and productive. Par, the mouth and head, also is shown to be a man, standing up, reaching up, pointing to God, as we move from Par to Parah. So these things are important for us to appreciate, that it's like Yahweh's name ending in a hey, because there are two men who are instrumental in establishing Yahweh's name and reputation, what he's trying to achieve. Doesn't make Yahweh feminine. It's expansive, just as it is in Etz going to Etzah, Adam to Adamah, Par to Parah. It's expansive. And if I were to try to crawl into Yahweh's mind, if you will, for a moment to see, why would he say that? Why would he use what he is the most common Hebrew suffix for femininity, to take something that is masculine and add a feminine aspect to it? So combining masculine and feminine. Why would he use that to expand the potential and the value of a word? Like Yahweh, his name, like Adamah, like Parah, like Etzah. And I think the answer is found in Dode. Dode is the man who is equal parts head and heart, cerebral and emotional, passionate, devoted, caring, concerned, but also brilliant and articulate. And I think when we combine the best of what makes a woman valuable and the best of what uniquely is attributable to men, we have something far more complete. You know, where God describes men as being more rational and women as being more emotional. If you don't have both together, you have very little of anything of value. Being super smart but having no empathy creates monsters. Having all empathy but not being very intelligent about it creates the kind of crappy world that we witness here today, where overriding empathy without intelligence has created a tremendous mess. You need both if you're going to have the entire capability of what it means to be fully human. In fact, if God's saying he created man in his image in lesser dimensions, by adding the to his name and the to some of these titles that he is using to describe those men who are working with him, I think what he is saying is that we are more complete. We have more to offer. We have more within us to draw out. We have not just the mental motivation that comes out of conviction, but we have this devotion and passion to do whatever it takes, regardless of how many obstacles are thrown in our way, no matter how much we are slandered, no matter how difficult the job is, no matter how many times we may fall, stumble, or make mistakes and find the need to correct them, that we care enough, love enough, that we will continue. That's my take. You're welcome to yours. That notwithstanding, Adamah, the single male. It's a depiction which is relevant in this context because God is affirming that the Zaroah, which is a feminine noun based upon Zara, to sow seeds that lead to a productive harvest, who is cultivating the Shabuwah Katsir and the Taruwah Laqat, that Zaroah, while ultimately serving as a Parah, this fullness of this productive bull, a bull with heart and a mind, is going to be exceedingly active at this time. And I suspect it was also Yahweh's intent to introduce the other half of this man's Adamah Parah title with Adam right after he spoke of the Parah. That's the Parah Adamah, bloody red man of the earth, now fulfilling the role of the productive bull. This is Yashaya 63's man from Edom, who's dressed in red, who gets into that wine vat with the prophet and who saves many. Now it is on this day, Yom Taruwah in year 6000 Yah, 9/24/33, that the Adamah Parah regard for Yahweh and Dod and his commitment to fulfilling the Moedim will provide more than sufficient motivation. And that's a tall order, since it will require letting his guard down and allowing Hasatan to bludgeon him to death as a sacrificial offering to cleanse and prepare the mortal remnant of Yisrael for the Messiah's return. Think of this. At that point, I will have lived 32 years with thousands of Malak defending me. I will have endured thousands of death threats as a result of what I have written and said on behalf of Yahweh and against the evils of religion. Thousands. And I will have enjoyed the benefits of the seven spirits of Yahweh to enable, books like these. The final unveiling of prophets like Daniel, the explanation that we're going through right now in Yashaya, Isaiah. The ability to excoriate Christianity, to prove that it is absolutely and unequivocally false. And to having done the same thing, and I am the only person to have done this, to have written 5 volumes proving, using only the 5 earliest Islamic sources, that Muhammad wasn't a prophet, that Allah is not a God, and that Islam is a death threat. 4,200 pages of proof. So it's a lot that I'm going to have to say to the 7 spirits of Yahweh. I need you to move away for the moment. I have to tell the thousands of Malak that Yahweh has deployed, it's time to stop doing the job that you were asked to do. I need my Bashar body as the Bashar herald to be vulnerable to this absolute piece of rotten rubbish known as the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan. It will be the Donald Dumpster, Donald Trump. Imagine that piece of scum that tortured so many young children, that will have brought the world to its knees through world wars, who will have destroyed the U.S. economy and the savings of millions of people, that lies at every opportunity, is this self-aggrandizing one, literally the scum of the earth. Do I expect him to get his own hands dirty? Hell no. And bone spurs kept him out of wars, and yet he relishes being the head of the U.S. military. No, he'll use his minions. But I'm going to tell all of the protection that I've had for 32 years to stand down and let him beat me to the point that there would be only one bone that isn't broken. That's what the prophets say. And it will be out of love for Yahweh, respect for my King Dod, and the desire for Yahweh and for Dod to have the family reunion that they so desire and so deserve with the chosen people who will finally have chosen them. And I want to be really clear about this. I shared this with my wife the other day because she had written the song for my funeral that I hope that Yahweh and Elia play when where I'm enduring this sacrifice, that I don't view that I am sacrificing anything. No, I look at this as a favor. The reason that this is different from what Dode experienced, Dode figured out that he should serve as the Passover lamb and carry our guilt away into Sheol on Matzah. He read the text of the Torah. He listened to what Yahweh had said to him during his life, and he came to the conclusion that this is his responsibility, that he should do this, and he wanted to do it. And he realized the benefits of him doing it. So he really wanted to do this. And he convinced Yahweh, which I'm sure was not difficult, because Yahweh recognized that it was the right thing for his son to do, to give up these 2 days for an eternity of respect. And so Dode volunteered, and Yahweh accepted that. That was not true in my case. I read Yashayah here, the very passages that we're talking about here. I read them, and I came to realize that this is what's going to happen to me. And when I realized what was going to happen to me, my response wasn't, oh my God, I don't want to do this. That's horrible. How do I get out? Where's the exit door? No, it was immediately, I appreciate the trust. I think I'm strong enough to do this. I'll do it. Yeah. I'm actually pleased that you would have this much confidence in me, that you knew I would see it through, that I would do this for your people. That's not how I view it anymore. I mean, that's all true. So I couldn't say that's not how I view it anymore. I view something else that's far more important. Not a sacrifice at all. It's a gift. I know God presents it as a gift to his people because I'm purging them of their religiosity so they can re-enter the garden and, be enriched and empowered by God. So God views it as a gift to them. No, I view it as a gift to me. Why? Same reason I view the fulfillment of Passover and matzah as something that had great benefit to Dode, even though it's a gift for all of us, because Dode earned our eternal respect and trust and admiration. And if you're going to be called to work with somebody that has garnered everyone's respect and admiration for having done this magnificent thing that Dode did, wouldn't it be pretty tough to be the intermediary that's his herald, that is advancing whatever he wants accomplished, and just to be the average, dunderhead that's stubbing his toes and is an observant foreigner, but has really nothing else to offer? Yeah, I wrote a bunch of books, but big deal. That was forever ago. How do you even stand next to a man who has made that kind of sacrifice for our well-being in an ordinary situation? You don't. And so it's a gift. God's saying, yeah, you're too going to be the other one that is bludgeoned for the well-being of my people. And they will never forget it. And so it's the means that Yahweh has come up with to make the job, which is a job throughout eternity, easier. He's saying you don't need to prove yourself ever again after that. You will have earned the people's respect. So I view it as a gift. Anyway, Yada's focus is on the set-apart one of Israel, which is descriptive of both King Dode and of Yahweh. So with the last ounce of, by the way, I know this rubs some people wrong because they view Yahweh here, Dode here, and all the rest of us way down here. That's not the way that God views it. When God told us explicitly in the 89th Mizmor that Dode will be the Elyon, the influence, the very hand of the Almighty, he was telling us that we ought to view God through this man. That God is being represented by Dode. And so when I say that Dode and Yahweh are both the set apart one of Yisrael, I mean it exactly that way. Yeah, Yahweh was infinitely more powerful. Yahweh was infinitely more powerful than Dode. It's not the case anymore. No, Yahweh was more powerful and more capable now than he was 3,000 years ago. The reason that the gap has shrunk is by intent. To call Dode Elyon, Yahweh has empowered and enriched, enabled, enlightened Dode to the point that he can be presented as Elyon. That's what he wants to do with all of us. He wants the gap, which used to be like, he wants that gap to be like this. And the beauty of it is when it's done right, it isn't what I've just done here. No, it's he continues to grow and become even greater through these shared experiences while drawing us up and raising us to meet him. This is what he's offering. This is why Dode and Yahweh represent the set apart one of Yisrael, why it can be presented as singular and still speak of these two individuals. Because it is God's intent to make Dode as indistinguishable from him as is possible. And to take us up to near that same level. Pretty cool. So with the last ounce of his devotion, Yahweh will cleanse, not Yahweh's devotion, but Yahweh's compassion for his people, the devotion of the implement that he chooses to use. Yahweh is going to miraculously cleanse his people, doing so by purging their last traces of religion and politics and militancy. It will be an extraordinary day's work with, well, exemplary results. And speaking of results, we're reminded that Elia earned God's respect 2,888 years ago. That will be at the time that he fulfills this promise. When he had the courage and the intellect and the gift of gab to excoriate the political and the religious establishment of Israel, telling Israel, you ought not be political. You ought not be religious. These things are anathema to God. They are deadly and they are stupid. There's no substance to your politics. There is nothing of value in your religion. And he did it brilliantly. And he's going to perform that exact same role also over the sacrifice of a bull with copious amount of water being released and God igniting the fire, all to his oratory as the bull's carcass is burnt as an uplifting offering. So then, he will never accept, care about, or gaze upon the altars of his works. They will not focus upon what their hands have made, nor either that which is associated with the Asherahs, the mothers of gods, the queens of heavens, the Madonnas and child, or the sun worship and the images associated with sun god worship. Yashayah 17:8. Well, yes, it is free at last. Thank God Almighty, we will be free at last. After having the overtly religious exterminated by Yahweh, as he did following the golden calf, if you recall, as he did following Eliah's performance in excoriating the religious and political establishment. Gone. Once the mortal remnant has been purged by the sacrifice of the Adam of Pearl, there'll be no trace of religion. It will go right back to what God has said, or in this case, we'll be chronological, what he will say through the prophet Yirmiah, and the reestablishment of the covenant, when he puts his Torah teaching inside of us, such that he says, you will never again see this kind of dishonesty. Be no trace of religion. Be no black suits in Israel, no rabbis, no Talmuds, no Jewish law. And of course, there'll be no Christians, no Muslims, and no Marxists, no conspiratorialists, and no anti-Semites either. It will be as it was 2,888 years ago. That would be 40 Yobel, and 888. 3 epochs of 8. Representing infinity. After Eliah's repudiation of all things pertaining to the politics and religion of Israel, but this time enduring forever, with the people themselves cleansed, the Asherahs and the sun god vestiges that have been incorporated into Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the little beanie cap, the kippah, it's a sun god symbol derived from the Greeks. All of that's going to be expunged. The Star of David, because it has nothing to do with David. It has all to do with the false Messiah, Bar Kokhba. That star also expunged from the planet. As we turn the page back in time to our future and explore what the Torah reveals about tomorrow, all of this becomes relevant because it is where God wants to take his people. Now, pulling back so that we can see the bigger picture, frame to frame, which is to experience this prophecy as it will play out. We find that the consensus of the world leaders will be such that the Muslims, moronically called Palestinians, who stand in a long line of Islamic terrorists who have been killing, raping, enslaving, and persecuting Jews since 622 CE, that they somehow deserve an autonomous state of terror, appeasing them as did Neville Chamberlain, the Nazis, and to give birth to the Second World War. Now, Falkenstein will have the same borders that Muslims violently rejected in the 1948 War of Independence, the 1967 Six-Day War, the 1973 Yom Kippurim War, the 1987 First Intifada, the 1993 Oslo Accords, the 2005 Gaza disengagement, the 2000 Second Intifada, which, by the way, was called the Al-Aqsa Uprising, and the 2023 Hamas massacre. Despite the grotesque and appalling immorality of rewarding mass murdering terrorists with a nation carved out of the heart of the very people they have sought to annihilate, Yahweh confirmed 2,700 years ago that this insanity would occur with many progressive Jews promoting their own demise. And once this occurs, especially in the most anti-Semitic climate in world history, and with 2 billion Muslims surrounding Israel, calling for the nation's demise, the Jewish state will begin fighting a losing battle and a deadly war for its right to exist, not wanting his covenant family to witness or endure the sadistic carnage, nor fall victim to it. Yahweh will be orchestrating the Shabuwah harvest of standing grain, possibly as early as the Shabbat of May 22nd, 2026, but no later than the Shabbat of June 11th, 2027, in concert with his Zeroah and Katsir. But make no mistake, if you're going to be part of this, it's not a vacation. We're going to Shamaim to recharge and prepare for what follows. We have a lot of work ahead of us because there is a Laqat. There is the sacrifice of the Adam of Perah. There is the return of our King. And there is the reemergence into the Gan Eden, of which we will be the teachers. Now, 3.5 years after the Taruwah, the Shabuwah Katsir, on Passover, on the 14th of Aviv, which is April 18th of 2030, Yada is going to return with Elia. And I suspect in addition to the 2 witnesses, there will be 8 designees who were harvested on Shabuwah, who will return, who God trusts to be effective and devoted implements to make the time of the 2 witnesses as productive as possible. Our mission will be to expose and condemn the adversary, now stirring the pot in corporeal form, while denouncing religion and politics. At the same time, the bull and the goat will be encouraging Jews to avail themselves of the upcoming Taruwah olive Laqat gleaning. However, and by design, not everyone is going to be withdrawn. The choder, after beating the olive tree to glean its fruit, will leave olives, either 2 or 3 on the top branch, or for a second and third time, as a 4th and 5th attempt at this gleaning, or for some iteration of 4 or 5 more in protective fissures of a crag. Those left behind will be protected, however. That's, after all, we're going back to a protective and sheltered garden. Thereafter, this remnant will witness the sacrifice of the Adam of Perah, as Yahweh specifies in Bamidbar, Numbers 19, on behalf of Numbers 5. What begins gruesomely as this bullish man is tortuously and publicly sacrificed, his heart literally devoured and his blood guzzled, all by the corporeal manifestation of Satan. The Perah's body will serve as a burnt offering for the remission of religious guilt. And that will occur on the Temple Mount. And that is the story our God has shared. We'll pursue this great story of upcoming harvests and of times of troubles, of marvelous sacrifices and glorious returns, even our re-entry into the garden, and a subsequent program. I wish you a wonderful day.